So in this video, we'll learn about Arnold Denoiser Imager. In the rendering section of the course, we'll learn about Arnold Denoiser and how to use the Denoiser tab in the render settings to denoise our image after the render is finished. Arnold Denoiser Imager allows you to apply denoising automatically as a post-processing effect after the render is finished in the IPR or in the picture viewer. Now let's see how to set it up. Like any other Arnold Imager, we can add it right from the render settings from the effects menu and change the imager type to Arnold Denoiser. I tend to add my Arnold imagers right from the IPR, so let's delete this one and add an Arnold Denoiser imager from the post tab in the IPR. Now, always remember, if you want to have multiple imagers like light mixer, exposure, tone mapping, and so on, the denoiser imagers should always be on top and the first imager in the list. Another important difference between Arnold Denoiser imager and Arnold Denoiser in the render settings is that you can use Arnold Denoiser in the render settings to get an accurate denoised animated sequence, while the imager does not support temporal denoising or frame blending, and therefore using it for denoising animated sequences will result in artifacts and undesired results. So if you are trying to denoise an animated sequence, remove the denoiser imager and use the old workflow that we learned before. Now let's see how it works. You notice we have the same denoising parameters like in the denoiser tab in the render settings, including variance, patch radius, and search radius. If I open up the render settings and take a look at the AOVs, in addition to the beauty AOV, we also have diffuse direct and indirect, and also specular direct and indirect AOVs. If you remember in the previous versions of Arnold Denoiser in the render settings would only denoise beauty and light group AOVs. Now Arnold Denoiser in the render settings can also denoise other AOVs. We take a look at that in the next video. Arnold Denoiser Imager can also denoise all the AOVs. To do that using the Arnold Denoiser Imager, just go to the selection tab, and right now the AOVs to be denoised is set to only the beauty AOV, but I can change it to all, and that will denoise not only the beauty AOV but all of them. Now let's maximize and run the IPR to see what we get. Now the render is finished and denoising is applied after the render. You can see the beauty render element is denoised, even though because we don't have enough sampling and the original render is fairly noisy, the denoising seems a bit patchy. And if I take a look at the other render elements, they are denoised as well. Now, if we want to keep the original undenoised AOVs and save out the denoised AOVs to separate passes, we just have to enable this output to separate AOVs. Now, for each AOV, a separate denoised AOV will be generated with the underscore denoised suffix. Now, let's wait for the IPR to be finished. Now, if I take a look at the AOVs dropdown, we get our original undenoised AOVs and a separate denoised version for each one. For example, we get our original undenoised beauty and the denoised version. Or the original diffuse indirect, which is very noisy, and the diffuse indirect denoised version, which is clean. We can adjust the denoising parameters after the IPR is finished, and it doesn't restart the IPR from scratch, but depending on how many AOVs you are denoising, it will take some time. For example, if I increase the variance from 0.25 to 1, you notice the IPR does not start from scratch, but the post-processing will start and take some time to denoise all the passes. In this case, it will probably take around 30 seconds to update the denoising for all the AOVs. Now, because we have increased variance, we get a much stronger denoising compared to before. Let me stop the IPR for now. Now, let's just take a final render to see this process basically finalized, not just in the IPR. Now, if you want to save out these AOVs, the saving workflow is the same. Just use Cinema 4D's native save option or an Arnold driver. So I'm just going to add an Arnold EXR driver, enable merge AOVs. If we were planning to denoise these layers with the Arnold Denoiser In the render settings, we had to enable output Arnold Denoiser AOVs, but as the imager does the denoising, we don't have to. I'm gonna save it to this deleted folder on my desktop and name it whatever you want. Now we can save it and start the final render. Now, if I take a look at the layers tab, we have our original AOVs and our denoised one. The denoised layers seem to be empty, but the information is there, just can't be viewed in the picture viewer. And obviously, because picture viewer does not support ACEs, the render does not look correct as well. Let's go to Fusion and take a look at the final render there. So here we are in Fusion. Let's drag the final render and use the split EXR script to extract all the AOVs. Let's view the original undenoised render in the left view and the denoised version in the right view, which is this RGBA_denoised. So you see the original render is noisy and the denoised version is clean. Now the render looks correct because I have an OCIO LUT applied in both the left and the right views. Now let's look at diffuse indirect AOV in the left view and diffuse indirect denoise in the right view. So you'll see how Denoiser Imager has denoised all the AOVs. Cool, so that's about Arnold Denoiser Imager. See you in the next one.